a counter-protester, identified as Amir Balat, an 18-year-old man, lit and threw an ignited device toward the protest area. The bomb squad responded and examined the devices. Based on preliminary examination and X-ray imaging, the devices, which were a bit smaller than a football, appear to be a jar wrapped in black tape, importantly with nuts, bolts, and screws, along with a hobby fuse that could be lit.
So I want to address the latest hoax, although I'm not sure it's much of a hoax given that we did just witness a attempted Islamic terror attack. But you may remember seeing some media headlines yesterday about a supposed bomb scare that took place outside of Zohran Mamdani's mansion during a quote-unquote far-right protest. And then they tried to say it was just a smoke bomb, but the overall media framing here was what? It was sounding like some right-wing radical was attempting to bomb Zohran Mamdani, except none of that was true. As a matter of fact, it was not the opposite. It was not Zohran Mamdani who was the victim or target here. It was the right-wing protesters themselves after an Islamic radical counter-protester showed up and tried to plant a nail bomb intended to hurt, maim, and potentially kill the right-wing protesters here in question, not Mamdani. So let's be clear about that. We just witnessed an Islamic radical try to take out right-wing protesters. It's yet another symptom of the people and the very ideology that we have, of course, imported into this country under the immigration policy that Mamdani advocates for. And yet in some of the most insane and ridiculous media gaslighting that I think I've seen during the entire Trump era, which is really saying a lot, they're trying to frame this and shift the blame here on the right-wingers and completely obfuscate the fact that it was literally an Islamic radical terror attack against right-wingers, not a right-wing terror attack. And the funny thing is that it doesn't even stop, because after the NYPD came out and is now explaining what happened, right? It was not some innocent smoke bomb. It was actually intended to hurt people. It just didn't end up going off. And yes, this was perpetrated by Islamic radicals. We are still seeing Zohran Mamdani himself put the blame on this entire incident on the supposed far right, while of course covering up and running defense for the very Islamic radical terrorists that he obviously is serving in some form as his constituency here. It is ridiculous. It is utterly disgusting. But at the same time, why should we be surprised, right? We told you from the beginning, first of all, that the Democrat Party absolutely does support political violence. It doesn't matter how much they try to claim, oh, we condemn violence, we're for peace. No, when you so dishonestly frame everything that happens from your own radical left supporters in a way that actively runs protection for them, you are, of course, rooting for what? More of that violence to happen, right? When you knowingly lie about it in a way that protects the people who are actually committing the attacks, yes, in some way or another, you are supporting it, you are sponsoring it. We know, by the way, the very reason why Mamdani won't simply be honest about what happens here. Gee, I wonder if there's a personal affiliation there to be had, right? And of course, they're going to, oh, you're racist for saying that, you're being Islamophobic. I am pointing out directly here, Zohran Mamdani, the self-proclaimed Muslim mayor, is running cover quite literally. He is lying. He is actively covering up for Islamic terrorists in his own city. You tell me what I'm supposed to interpret that as, right? So that said, we'll break this hoax down, guys. We'll get into all of it. But again, it shouldn't be surprising given the coalition of third worlders and foreigners that got Mamdani elected. No surprise. He's serving his constituency by defending violent terrorists. What else is new? This is the left. This is their obvious alliance with the radical jihadis that both have a shared common interest of tearing down Western civilization. We call it the red-green axis there for a reason. But let's get into all of it, guys. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. We greatly appreciate the support, but it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all the latest news and coverage. And that said, take a listen, for instance, to the media headlines out of, this is as one example, NBC for New York, who stated yesterday that multiple arrests were made after suspicious devices were found outside of the Gracie Mansion, that is where Zohran Mamdani's mayoral residence is, home of Zohran Mamdani, during an anti-Islam rally in counter-protest. So, of course, you read that on the surface, and it sounds a lot like they're blaming the supposed anti-Islam rally here that was organized by Jake Lang and some right-wingers. Obviously, whole thing is completely vague, except as you can see here, it later came out that the bombs were, of course, thrown at the anti-Muslim protesters, not by the anti-Muslim protesters, as these stories would lead you to believe. Multiple witnesses say that the attackers had shouted Allahu Akbar, of course, as they threw the bombs here at the right-wingers. And here is, of course, the NYPD confirming that and confirming the very identities here of the attackers, men identified here as Ibrahim Nick and Amir Balat. Take a look.
At approximately 12:38 p.m., a counter-protester identified as Amir Balat, an 18-year-old man, lit and threw an ignited device toward the protest area, landing in the crosswalk of East 87th Street and East End Avenue. Witnesses reported seeing flames and smoke as it traveled through the air before it struck a barrier and extinguished itself a few feet from police officers. Mr. Balat then ran southbound on East End Avenue toward 86th Street and gets a second device from a man tentatively ID'd as Ibrahim Nick, 19 years old. Mr. Balat lights the device and starts running with it. He then drops the device on the west side of East End Avenue between East 86th and East 87th Streets. Officers immediately secured the area and they took both men into custody. This was all captured on NYPD Argus camera. The bomb squad responded and examined the devices. Based on preliminary examination and X-ray imaging, the devices, which were a bit smaller than a football, appear to be a jar wrapped in black tape, importantly with nuts, bolts, and screws, along with a hobby fuse that could be lit.
Yeah, so what we were able to even clearly tell from the initial details based on who these guys are, what they were showing up to, what they were doing, is that this was clearly an attempted Islamic terror attack targeted at right-wingers, because as you can tell, both the left and their allies over in the jihad love to perpetrate and support and commit violence against right-wingers. It is a pretty common occurrence, if we're being completely honest, and based on the actions, it does appear to be premeditated. You know, it's not a case of some guys losing their cool and getting into a fist fight. No, they showed up that day with the full premeditated intent to cause this whole situation. And what we further are now able to confirm is that it was not just a mere innocent smoke bomb, right? This is not just some random prank as early initial reports were suggesting. No, it was indeed a nail bomb that was intended to explode and scatter those nails, that metal, and that shrapnel everywhere. The only issue here is that these attackers were not all that smart, and in the end, the nail bomb, despite them igniting it and there being obvious smoke in the air here, did not in the end detonate, and we're very lucky, we're very blessed here that did not happen. According to NYPD Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch, she just put out here that the NYPD bomb squad has conducted a preliminary analysis of a device that was ignited and deployed at a protest yesterday, and has now determined that it is not a hoax device or a smoke bomb. So let's also make that very clear. Again, not a prank we're talking about here. No, some kids were screwing around. It was not that. Hey, Mamdani, is this also a snowball fight? You just throw in a snowball, right? No, that's not the case. It is, in fact, an improvised explosive device that could have caused serious injury or death. Further analysis will be conducted, including on a second device, but these two, Amir Balat and Ibrahim Kayumi, so that is now the updated IDs apparently of these two, obviously, Arabic Islamic names, were arrested on scene yesterday and are in custody in connection with this matter. Although, don't be surprised if Alvin Bragg immediately tries to get these guys released and out of jail. Hey, they were just some kids who made a mistake. Give them probation or something. Hey, you want 2 hours of community service, right? We know how this stuff goes. Attempted terrorist attack? No. Just public disorder. That's all that they were causing here, right? The NYPD is working on this investigation with our partners at the U.S. Attorney's Office and FBI through our Joint Terrorism Task Force. So indeed, this is being investigated as a terrorist attack. And so, again, those are all the details that we know and we're able to gather thus far. Except take a look here at how Mamdani is framing the whole Islamic terror attack and greater situation in New York City. Because as you could expect, he's obviously fully intending to run cover and protect his own tribe here. And of course, is blaming the supposed white supremacists and far right here for the fact that one of his own supporters threw a bomb at them, right? So, much like you saw the justifications made for the assassination of Charlie Kirk, same exact story here. Whoa, if he didn't politically disagree with us, then he wouldn't have been dead, right? That is their actual argument. So that's why I say, right? Please make it crystal clear in your head. The Democrat Party absolutely supports and condones political violence. We know that for a fact, and we know that because they say things like this right here. Okay, so from Mamdani. Yesterday, white supremacist Jake Lang organized a protest outside of Gracie Mansion rooted in bigotry and racism. So yeah, obviously, as bombs are being thrown at them, let's, make a point to attack the victims here of this attempted terror attack. Such hate has no place in New York City. It is an affront to our city's values and the unity that defines who we are. So notice how that's what he chooses to lead with first, right? Not the hate of Islamic radicals throwing improvised explosive devices at these people. No. The issue is that Jake Lang and the right-wingers folks have the wrong ideas, right? So that's why, again, what are the mental gymnastics here? What is it about? They're trying to ultimately, in the end, morally justify violence against right-wing people who disagree with them because, don't you know, they have bigotry and racism. It's a white supremacist rally. That's why it's okay? So then he says, what followed was even more disturbing. Violence at a protest is never acceptable. The attempt to use an explosive device and hurt others is not only criminal, it is reprehensible and the antithesis of who we are. So you might read that and say, okay, Vince, what are you talking about? He condemned the violence. But notice how, again, if you know nothing about this story, you would have read that paragraph and thought that it was Jake Lang and the white supremacists who threw the bomb, right? Because notice he doesn't mention a counter protest. He doesn't mention Islam or the Muslims who showed up. No. He says the white supremacists organized a protest and then violence took place. Which again, guys, folks, means what? Implies what? It's the white supremacists who threw the bomb. No, that's not the case, Mamdani. But notice how, he'll name one but not the other. If he was trying to make a neutral statement, he would say, yesterday, we know there's a protest, violence broke out, we're investigating the situation. No, he makes an explicit, clear, and intended point to, first of all, condemn the right-wingers, call them white supremacists, call them bigots, then just say violence took place. What would you think had happened, right? But of course, right, as I said, that is how they're trying to frame this. It is the most ridiculous hoax and gaslighting that you probably would ever see. So it then goes on to say, I want to thank the brave men and women of the NYPD who acted quickly to keep our New Yorkers safe. Our officers ran towards danger without hesitation, etc., etc. My administration is closely monitoring the situation, and I remain in close contact with our police commissioner. So you can tell by the end of that statement, absolutely no indication here besides a dishonest framing of what actually happened. People are tearing him apart in the comments, as you could expect, for very obvious reasons. As I noted here, a Muslim threw a nail bomb outside his mansion at right-wingers, and the guy blames white supremacy.
Oh, I'm already knowing a lot of y'all gonna dodge this one right here.
We came here to remake this state in the image of our people.
Recreate the state in the image of your what now? Why does a mayor have a red bandana across his face like that? Y'all gonna say, oh, that was his past. You worry about his past. No. Because his past is definitely concerned about our future, bro. If this was Trump or any other elected official, this would raise some concerns, and I'm surprised it hasn't as yet.
So there you have Mamdani's response, and I don't exactly think that this should be too surprising, given that we know for a fact Mamdani is a radical left-wing fanatic, no matter how many attempts he's tried to make in recent months to claim, oh, I'm not a revolutionary communist anymore. 100% the actions there do speak louder than shallow words. And after all, if he got elected on a coalition of people, who literally do think like this, right? We have broken down many times just how radical and largely supportive of political violence that left-wing voters actually are in this country. You combine that, of course, with the migrant coalition that he has imported to make sure that he can get the 51% of the votes there in a place like New York City. I mean, at the end of the day, who are you going to side with? Are you going to side with some type of vague principles of morality or decency as a politician? Or are you going to take the side of the very people who got you elected to begin with? I think we know the answer there. And that's also why I so often say we can't just blame this on Democrat politicians, because clearly it's not just them. It's not even just the media. Given the online reactions, for instance, that we saw following the assassination of Charlie Kirk, a huge portion of their voters actually do feel this way. Now, that said, I will also point out that this is a very pertinent and frankly terrifying example of how these lunatics will rewrite the history books if they ultimately win in the end. Okay, because you see them already doing that now, right? The revisionist history, the mainstream media, and Zohran Mamdani trying to say, oh, this was a white supremacist terror attack that was led against Muslims, or they're severely trying to imply it, right? And we already know for a fact that they've basically rewritten the entire history of the 1960s. It's not like this is not done before. So what do you think will happen ultimately if these people win? How do you think the event will be logged? I mean, how do you think they'll recall the assassination of Charlie Kirk? Will they put that down as an innocent, peaceful guy who was trying to engage in free speech? He loved God, he loved his family, was shot by a violent terrorist? Or are they going to compare him to John Brown, right? The Charlie Kirk assassination in that case. The assassin, I should say, in that case, right? Oh, you know, this brave young kid decided to take matters into his own hands, take out this evil fascist, and the system fought him for it, but in the end, he was this great guy. Same story here. That should terrify you. That should scare the crap out of you, and that, of course, should emphasize the importance here of ultimately prevailing and ensuring that these lunatics do not take wider political power, because that is actually what they will do, right? They will erase the truth. They will erase any past record of the great civilization that came before and try to convince everyone, oh, no, we're the good guys. We were just peaceful reform, all this. Obviously not the case. So all of that said, guys, there you essentially have it. We'll bring you any more updates if they do come here. But again, just utterly insane, utterly ridiculous. And it does serve as yet another example as to why, a lot of people have said, well, the whole Trump-Iran conflict, it's maybe they're critical from the right wing because they view it as a distraction from his domestic agenda. And I say, I see the argument there, but it also doesn't have to be like that. We could also say that, well, because of the potential of sleeper cells within this country who already have engaged in at least 2 terror attempts that we know of, have to be deported, right? It's a reason to ramp up deportations. It's a reason to continue cracking down on violent left-wing NGO networks. And by the way, raising very serious questions about the loyalties of politicians like Zohran Mamdani, Ilhan Omar, right? A lot of these people who are foreign-born politicians who bring in, their foreign culture, their foreign revolutionary, radical, violent ideals and are sympathizing with them to this very day. Just something to consider there, right? Don't let them rewrite the books to say Mamdani was this just lovely, peaceful guy. He definitely never tried to make excuses or justifications for political violence, right? So all of that said, guys, let me know your thoughts. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.